All right, let's do this. I'm going to rip through this. I have my questions here. I'm going to see if I can go through as many as possible. What I've been doing is I've been taking screenshots of, because I do see some of the comments. I try to anyway. I know I miss a bunch, but I do try to take screenshots and then save them and then kind of put them together into a little list. So I'm going to see how far we get with all of this. This may be like 2 videos or something like that. Some of these will probably need their own videos by themselves as far as explanations are concerned. And I have been given thought to the idea of doing maybe a once a week live on TikTok. Let me know in the comments if that's something that you guys are interested in or not and stuff. I mean, just to the extent that I can, okay? I don't have all the answers or anything. I'm some random guy on the internet. Do not elevate me to anything other than that. But anyway, I'll do my best to answer some of the questions that I've been getting. So the one here was like, do unions hold this way that they used to? It depends. I mean, the challenge is that, so because it's in the news, we've got this idea of the port strike, right? Well, the port does make a solid point here in that, like, yeah, the U.S. doesn't make anything. Now, I think that's a shame. I think we should make things. I think that the U.S. Americans should be building shit. I don't think that we should be importing everything from slave countries. I think that's wrong. Not for any moral reason. Take morality out of this. I'm just talking about, like, just the idea of division of labor in your own goddamn country. And wanting to make sure that you actually have people who know what they're doing, because if you've followed my work for any length of time, you've probably seen me talk about the competency crisis, and that is getting worse and not better. That's getting worse, and it's because there are so few people who actually know how to do any goddamn thing anymore. It's becoming, I mean, it's so much so that it was a South Park episode, for Christ's sake. Okay, it's getting bad, where you've got people who are homeowners, for example, who don't really even understand, like, the basics of home maintenance, right? Yet they own a house. I'm not picking on people for this. I'm just pointing out, like, that's a problem. I mean, growing up as a kid, it's Gen Xer, right? Every Gen Xer will tell you the same thing. They'll say, yeah, I mean, my grandfather fixed everything. They'll all tell you that. I mean, that's just kind of how it is. So now a lot of times they did it because they were broke and they couldn't afford anybody else. Well, yeah, I mean, join the club. But at least you knew how to do some of this stuff. And nowadays there's really kind of no excuse, because it's like, dude, you have YouTube. You can do professional grade almost anything at this point if you can follow direction. Okay, so do I think that unions carry the same sway? Maybe, but it's going to be industry specific. How long do you think the current system could last? I've been over this a couple of times. Not that that's not a bad question. It's just that it's like, I've been over this a couple of times. I think it can last as long as they can import slave labor, right? The dollar's tied to that. The dollar is very much tied to the idea of progressively cheaper and cheaper labor to keep this Ponzi scheme going, because it's a debt-based currency, right? Which means that somebody has to be willing to borrow a dollar in order to create a dollar, okay? So it's even worse than just pure fiat. Pure fiat would just be print a bunch of money and send it to everybody. Pure fiat would be like Zimbabwe type thing, right? It's actually worse than that, because it's debt-based and there's no way to pay any of this debt. So, you know, how long can this go? It can go as long as people are willing to put up with it, and as long as they can keep importing slaves that will work for dollars, that will accept dollars as currency. I mean, that really is the short answer. I've done other videos on the long answer if you want to look them up. Why can't we just give Americans subsidies? Why do we need to bring a bunch of immigrants in to give them subsidies? And, oh, well, okay, yeah, this is actually kind of a bit of a tragic thing, but there's, it depends. When you subsidize behavior, you get more of it, right? That's how this works. So when you subsidize a people, you get what? More of them. And if you don't subsidize the other people, you get what? Less of them, or fewer, I guess. So I guess in this case it'd be less and fewer. Anyway, no, you get fewer of them, right? Well, if you're trying to take over the U.S., what do you want? A bunch of Americans? No, you want a bunch of tired old guys sitting around in diapers all day bitching about, you know, vote for Trump because he's a deity or something like that. He's going to save us. No, he's not. But that's, You know, or vote Harris or whoever. Okay, it doesn't matter. That's what you want, is a bunch of tired old people sitting around in adult diapers playing fucking video games and arguing about whether climate change is real. While all of our money gets sent to other countries, right? And then they import a bunch of people, give them a bunch of money and everything, so that way they can have a bunch of kids and then replace you. And then you no longer, you know, if you're just going to be lazy slaves, then they want to replace you. I've been over this. Many thousands of you found that video, found me on that video, the math catching up video. That's exactly how this game is played. Like, well, that's great replacement theory. It's not a theory. Think of yourself like a farmer. If you have a bunch of critters that are not producing and you make money off of them reproducing, what are you going to do? You're either A, going to go find another farm, or you're going to replace the livestock. And race has nothing to do with it, by the way, for those of you out there that are just all obsessed with race, because some of you people are just fucking retarded with this whole thing about race. Dude, race has nothing to do with this. These are farmers, man. If you're not producing for them, then they're going to replace you with people who will. Well, but the other people are incompetent. That doesn't mean anything. They don't care about the competency crisis. Look what we got right now. It's full idiocracy. And not only that, some of you actually think that these people give a shit about, you know, the people. They don't care. They really don't. What a lot of leaders see is what leaders in other third world shitholes have. They get to be El Jefe or El Presidente or whatever the hell it is. And they get to wear the sash and all the medals. They look like Idi Amin, shit like that. You know, like that's all they give a shit about is presenting themselves to the world as royalty. It's neo-feudalism. I mean, so what do they give a shit about the peasants? Next one here. What exactly would be your definition of use as far as land is concerned? Okay, well, there's a lot of different definitions of that. That's probably a separate video, and part of that actually is not just me doing that, right? I mean, like, that's all you as well, right? Like, I'm not going to have the 100% answer on this one. I know that I would give you my definition of use, which would be something like, okay, you find some land, you fence it off, and you start doing something with that land, you know, whether it's grazing livestock, you know, and I don't mean, you know, I'm talking about within reason, okay, obviously, and then being able to maintain all of said land, right? And not having any subsidies. The quickest way to define real value is to have no subsidies of any kind. And of course, printed fiat bullshit nonsense currency is the biggest subsidy of all. So if you didn't have that and you had an actual hard currency that obeyed all the laws of physics on this planet, then what happens is that very quickly you find out that most people can't support these giant operations. Most giant mega operations can't survive, actually. They just don't have the ability to do that. So there you have it. As I've said before, small businesses will run circles around the mega companies, okay? And a good way to look at that, well, no, I'll listen to that later. Anyway, how would a hard currency system impact the social programs such as veterans and disability benefits? I'd imagine the government would run into big budget constraints. Yeah, they would probably go away. Let me just rip that Band-Aid off right now. They probably would go away. Veterans and Social Security recipients and so on, they're going to go away anyway, right? I mean, one of two things is going to happen. Either you get the currency, you get the money, you get what was promised to you, but it doesn't buy anything, right? It doesn't have any effective buying power. So if it doesn't have any buying power, what good is it? Remember, people don't work, you know, men don't work for money in an abstract sense. They work for money because of what the money will buy them. And if it doesn't buy them anything, they're just going to stop caring about it, right? So yeah, that's what would probably happen. Most of that stuff would go away. I wish I had a better answer for you. Well, will the government replace it with anything? Probably not, because you're assuming that they had any intention of keeping their word in the first place, and they don't. We've already been over the negotiation tactic, and if we understand how proper negotiation works, most people have no intention of keeping their word on it, which is why contracts have to be written, you know, or agreed to the way that they are. So I'm going to move on into part 2. So see you then.